Why don't we go ahead and get the August 9th meeting of the Laguna Honda JCC to order. Mark, will you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Guillermo,
Present.
Commissioner Chow,
Present.
and Commissioner Green.
Present.
All right, I will read the land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Health Commission acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples.
Thank you, Mark. Go ahead and call the items.
Sure. Item 2 will be the approval of the minutes for the July 12th, 2022 JCC meeting. And commissioners, before we move forward, I just want to note 2 corrections that you've offered to me, which will be amendments to the minutes. One is that Commissioner Guillermo was in attendance, so that was incorrect. It shows her as excused. And then on page 3, the right above the last comment under the executive team report, Commissioner Chow asked for his comment to be stricken and changed. And so the new comment would say, Commissioner Chow asked for a presentation at the Full Health Commission to note that we must make a good faith effort as required by CMS to place residents.
Okay. Any other changes, additions, deletions? Okay. If I can have a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Okay. And seconded.
And then commissioners, there is a hand up, and I'll call for public comment too, but just know there's somebody there. Folks in the line, if you'd like to make comment on item 2, the minutes, please press *3 now. And in general, folks, if you'd like to make comment on an item, please raise your hand by pressing *3 at the beginning of the item when it's announced. That will give us time to see you because there's sometimes a delay when you're viewing it at home. So person on the line, I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock, and I'll mute you and then check in with you. Can you hear us, caller?
Yes, it's Patrick Manetshaw.
You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Manetshaw.
Thank you. It's too bad the meeting minutes don't include former District 1 Supervisor Sandra Lee Pure's comments she published in the Richmond Review. Quote, the problems of substandard care LHH clearly could have been prevented and could have been remedied. This is huge. Either people made mistakes, don't care enough to be diligent, or lacked leadership and follow through. Regardless, DPH and CMS need to, quote, own this. Pure is absolutely correct, just as she often was when she was on the Board of Soups. DPH and the Health Commission downplayed all along the severity of patient care violations that occurred at Laguna Honda between October 2021 and March 2022. DPH has not acknowledged ownership that it itself is responsible for the violations and potential closure of Laguna Honda. For a long time, past time, this JCC and the Full Health Commission take ownership of your mistakes. Thank you.
Mark, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, caller. I will take a roll call vote on the minutes because I see no other hands up. Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Chow?
Yes.
And Commissioner Guillermo?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The item passes. We can move on to item 3, the general public comment. Folks, this is a time to make comment about something that's not on the agenda. So any topic that's not agendized, you're welcome to make comment at this time. If you start speaking about something that is on the agenda, I probably will stop you and ask you to make the comment in the correct place. I see 2 hands. Again, each of you have 3 minutes. Caller, please let us know that you're there.
Yes, this is Steve Zeltzer with United Public Workers, United Front for Labor Party. There's nothing on the agenda about an investigation a criminal investigation of the discharge of 11 residents of Laguna Honda and their death. And I think there needs to be an investigation by the district attorney of how these people could be discharged to homeless shelters in their dire and fragile conditions. And I think you've got blood on your hands, and this department has blood on its hands, the executives and the city for allowing this to happen. When people are sent to their death, which they have been doing at Laguna Honda, people have to be held accountable. And I think the people of San Francisco, the residents of San Francisco, need to hold these politicians responsible, and the executive director and this board should resign, really. You haven't been doing your job. You're personally responsible because you're voting to cover this up. So I think the people need to demand the district attorney and the city attorney call for an investigation of the deaths of these 9 people and accountability. The fact that this has been going on for years, it's not a new development at Laguna Honda, shows that you know about it and you have done nothing about it. So what does that say about your stewardship of Laguna Honda and Department of Public Health? This is an ongoing systemic crisis, and there is going to be a rally on the Laguna Honda on Saturday at 11 a.m. to make demands on the city to keep that place open and to hold those people accountable for the deaths of the 9 people. That's going to be Saturday, 11 a.m. in front of Laguna Honda, because people cannot put up with this. People, hundreds of people are in dire situation. There are no places to send many of these residents and patients, and they're being shuffled out, they're being pressured out, and the workers there have done the best they can, and they're being harassed and bullied at Laguna Honda. You have to take responsibility for that. Why are the workers being blamed for this when they have nothing to do with it? When the management has mismanaged at Laguna Honda? This has to be confronted, and those of you who are running the Department of Public Health and the executives have to be held accountable, and we're going to see that that happens.
Mark, you're on mute again.
All right. Thanks for your previous comment. Caller, I've unmuted you. Please let us know that you're there.
Yes, it's Patrick. It's long past time the Health Commission climbed back into the driver's seat regarding the potential closure of Laguna Honda and reducing the number of beds and patients. The Health Commission should demand Laguna Honda's management halt all major decisions involving Laguna Honda, wait until the conclusion of City Attorney Chu's and Ms. Rennie's 2 lawsuits, and wait for the outcome of Chu's 3 appeals before pending before the DHHS administrative law judge, because if CMS's decertification is overturned, that should negate having to eliminate 120 beds, will keep Laguna Honda from having to discharge any more residents and prevent Laguna Honda from having to reapply for certification. This JCC and the Health Commission must ensure Laguna Honda's medical staff are free to independently screen and reject patients from SF General who are unsuitable or unsafe at
Caller?
Yes, do I still have time?
Yes.
The JCC and the Health Commission must ensure Laguna's medical staff can reject patients unsuitable or unsafe at Laguna Honda. Don't keep repeating mistakes from the 18-year failed flow project. Stop the flow project now. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Commissioners, that's the only public comment for this item. So we can move on to item 4, the executive team report.
Thank you. And Mr. Pickens, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners and JCC Chair Guillermo. Okay, next slide. So as you are aware, on July 28th, CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and CDPH, California Department of Public Health, agreed to the city's request to pause all transfers and discharges as part of the CMS required closure and patient transfer and relocation plan. Accordingly, we immediately paused those discharges and transfers. There were even patients ready to be transferred later that evening. We actually stopped those transfers and discharges immediately upon receiving that pause notice. That approximately affects the roughly 600 residents we currently have in-house. At this time, despite multiple requests as to how long this pause may last, we are being told that it is a pause while the state is reviewing its information based upon our previous discharges, but have not given any indication as to when or if this pause might be lifted. So, but as we learn of any changes in the pause in terms of being lifted, we will certainly make sure that the commission, the JCC, and all key stakeholders are made aware of that information. Next slide. Would I also like to share with you that on July 26th, CMS dispatched a transition facilitator here on site at Laguna to be able to be a resource both to the Laguna staff, to residents, families, and stakeholders, and anyone else with concerns about the patient closure and relocation plan. The facilitator's name is Mr. Charles Walters. He has a background in social work with nearly 10 years of experience working with skilled nursing facilities. Mr. Walters has been on site and actively working with Laguna Honda leadership, our incident command, and also facilitating discussions between Laguna Honda, CMS, CDPH, and California Department of Healthcare Services. He's also interacted with the Ombudsman program. Mr. Walters' information has been made available to all, and all are encouraged to contact him if needed. Next slide. So just to provide you with a little more detail of where are we in the closure plan, which, as I just stated, we're in a state of pause. So to date, from May 16th through the initiation of the pause on July 28th, there have been a total of 57 transfers and discharges. Of those, 41 were transfers to other skilled nursing facilities. And you see here the distribution by county. And 16 were discharges. Those were patients no longer requiring skilled nursing level of care and who were discharged to community-based destinations. Next slide. So in terms of next steps for the closure plan, obviously we continue to be open and operating, serving our roughly 600 residents who are in-house. And we also continue to work with CMS, CDPH, and Department of Healthcare Services to improve the process for our residents. In fact, just got off a call with them about an hour ago, and we continue to have multiple calls during the week with all of those agencies regarding the status of our closure plan. As I said before, they have not yet indicated how long the closure plan will be on pause. In addition, I'd like to just also update that, as we've mentioned here before, we've posed several questions, initially verbally and then followed up in writing with CMS, California Department of Public Health, and DHCS related to getting clarifying information regarding the closure plan that we could share with our patients and their families. So for example, if a patient exercises their right to appeal a discharge or transfer, how many opportunities do they get to do that before CDPH or DHCS would consider no longer providing coverage for them? So we've asked those questions over and over and still are awaiting a response. We've not yet received the response yet. Next slide. I want to just revisit this slide that we shared previously. This is our timeline for recertification. Just to remember the history of this, we developed this immediately after the decertification back in April. We did this initially based upon our internal best plans for recertification. That was before we brought on our consultants. The consultants themselves are actually part of this timeline. They came on in May. Currently, if you look at the very top in that yellow highlighted section, intense preparedness work, that's where we are. We've been in that process since June and are doing the activities reflected there. We just completed our first mock survey, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Implementing corrective actions. We'll be planning for a second mock survey and then moving forward towards preparation for submitting paperwork for the actual CMS certification survey later on this fall. Next slide. So as you can imagine, just as there are many different workflows and work streams related to the closure plan, which is currently on pause, we have an equal, if not greater amount of activity related to our efforts for recertification, which is really our primary goal, which is to get Laguna recertified. Even though we're having to implement this CMS mandated closure and patient relocation plan that is currently paused, from the very beginning, we've made it clear our primary priority is recertification of Laguna so it can continue to providing the care that it's provided for the last 150 years. We are working very hard to make sure we are identifying areas of non-regulatory compliance, utilizing primarily both consulting teams that we brought on board. Again, they hit the ground running when they came on board in May and have integrated themselves throughout the organization, working with our staff side by side to identify deficits, make immediate corrective actions when necessary, and then also plan for more long-term sustainable regulatory compliance. Next slide. So I want to bring to your attention part of the feedback from our consultants was that we needed to make a change in the structure of our nursing leadership. Essentially, the structure at Laguna, both on the nursing and administrative side, has been more like that of a typical acute care community hospital. Like a CPMC, like a San Francisco General, like a St. Mary's. However, most of the care we provide here is skilled nursing. The majority of our patients meet skilled needs. And so one of the first recommendations from the consultants that they made and that we've now implemented is a pilot reorganization, both of nursing leadership and of our administrative leadership. But in terms of the nursing leadership, you see here how things have changed. And a little bit further on in the presentation, we'll give more details, and our Chief Nursing Officer, Terry Dentoni, can provide some perspective on those changes. Next slide. So as I mentioned on that timeline, our first mock survey was completed. It was done in 2 phases. This represents phase 1 that was done a little over a month ago. And in that survey, they really focused on core Laguna Honda skilled nursing operations, the main hospital and the nursing units. We asked the surveyors, and these are mock surveyors, these are the actual consultants. And in the mock survey process, it's important to note that we asked them to emulate as much as possible and replicate the actual CMS survey process so that our staff and we as an institution will know what to expect when CMS comes out. So that's what they did. They applied the actual CMS survey tools and methodology and went through the organization. As a result of the mock survey phase 1 findings, there were 39 F tags. Those are the federal regulations for skilled nursing requirement, where we were not able to document compliance. So plans of correction were promulgated under the direction of Chief Nursing Officer Terry Dentoni, along with frontline and nursing leadership and others throughout the hospital to develop plans of correction. During the month of August, those plans of correction have already been implemented and are being monitored to see if the corrections are actually fixing the problems. Next slide. So mock survey phase 2. As I said, phase 1 really focused on key skilled nursing unit operations. Phase 2 was a much broader survey and actually moved beyond just the core nursing units. It included areas like in terms of overall facility operations, fire life safety, pharmacy, and a focus on infection control. Again, this is the actual process that CMS will use when they come for the survey. They will do both the initial skilled nursing component, and then they will follow up with a separate life safety, pharmacy, infection control. So again, we're emulating and replicating the actual experience so that we have some experience and comfort when the actual survey occurs. During phase 2, there were 5 areas that were identified in terms of deficits: infection control, keeping the environment free of hazards, food safety, medical equipment maintenance, and just a few findings in pharmacy. There are also many findings related to building fire life safety codes. And so similar to phase 1, the leadership and frontline staff from the affected units, so facilities, engineering, environmental services, pharmacy, food and nutrition, materials management, infection control and prevention, they all came together in what we call a plan of correction summit. They spent 2 full days working in teams, looking at all of the identified findings and FTAGs, and have developed plans of correction that have now, again, replicating the actual CMS process. Those plans of correction have been submitted to our mock surveyors, and they will be reviewing those just as CMS would to either approve or give feedback on the developed plans of correction. Next slide. A major component of our path towards recertification involves a comprehensive and massive staff education and engagement program. As you can imagine, engaging staff to learn and apply regulatory knowledge is a huge undertaking, especially for adult learners. The way our consultants have worked with us to try and address this in smaller bites and bits and pieces is to, there's a 3-pronged approach towards staff education. First is the incorporation of what are called CEPs, critical element pathways. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in more detail further on in the presentation. But essentially, CEPs, they are the playbook in the CMS skilled nursing facility world. Those are the guidelines that high-achieving, high-performing skilled nursing facilities use to train their staff, but they also use them for their ongoing performance improvement so that the daily workings of skilled nursing facilities are built around regulatory compliance and patient safety. And so that was a new concept here at Laguna. Laguna, previous to our consulting engagement, did not have a focus on CEPs. Really, we're not aware of them, but now we are. So again, this is an example of where our consultants recognized early on that Laguna needed to reflect in its management and its structure a more pure skilled nursing focus as opposed to an acute care hospital focus. The second component of our pillar of our education and staff engagement is this recertification comprehensive education plan. Essentially, we are requiring that all 1,000 plus staff at Laguna, anyone who works or provides service here, must go through a mandatory week-long training program. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what's in that plan later. But that includes me. I actually completed my second module today, my week 2 training, and I'll be in class again next week for the third module. And then finally, in terms of the pillars for how we're addressing staff education and engagement, are the huddle talking points. And in referencing one of your questions, Commissioner Green, you know, huddles are a main component of lean, the lean methodology. And so while we are not during this period of intense work towards recertification, doing any major comprehensive lean, like week-long value stream mapping, those kind of things, we are utilizing lean tools like huddle boards, having huddles and doing visual management on the units to help remind staff of what it means to be in a regulatory environment. Okay. So next slide. And I believe, Dr. Chow, you had questions about the critical element pathways, the CEPs that I just talked about. And so I think it would be a great opportunity. I'm going to ask our Assistant Nursing Home Administrator, Keith Chartier, who is our expert and who is teaching us really how to use CEPs to, I think, give you a really condensed explanation of how we're using those. Is that possible, Mark? Okay, so.
Sure. Keith can unmute himself and talk.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, Keith.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so just a really brief overview of what CEPs are. Like Roland said, they are really kind of like a roadmap for us to see how we can stay compliant in the long term. So just as a background, so Medicare has actually created 41 separate critical element pathways, and these cover just about every single aspect of nursing home care. Dietary, administration, physical restraints, pressure ulcers, nutrition. I mean, you name it, it's a nursing home, they cover it in these pathways. Now, what's important about this is if a surveyor comes into the building, they start their observations and they see something, they're going to use one of these pathways to help guide them through their investigation. And so they're going to do interviews, additional observations, they're going to do chart reviews, and these CEPs provide questions and prompts to guide those surveyors. And what's nice about it, though, is all these CEPs are linked to best practices and regulations in the nursing homes. So it's really helping you make sure you stay up to date with what the best practices are, but that you're going to be in compliance in the long run. And high-performing nursing homes, when I talk to some administrators and DONs, they always have the CEPs in hand with them. They go around, they do their rounding, and they want to match the current practice with what the regulatory standards are, so that way they have a sense of ongoing survey readiness. And what's nice about it is if you're curious about a problem, these CEPs can help guide you with the questions that the surveyors would actually ask themselves if they were here. So it's really like an open book test. There really is a lot of transparency with the survey process. And so we, in a sense, know exactly the types of questions that the surveyors will ask us. And so what we're doing with this program is we're trying to kind of demystify the whole survey process and what's asked of people. So our middle managers here, we're working in teams of 3 with every CEP and just regularly assessing them, looking at our practices and getting our staff to know the regulations and starting to think like a surveyor by regularly using these CEPs. So that's really it in a nutshell. We're using these consistently to maintain that sort of sense of ongoing survey readiness and making sure we're up to date with that compliance.
Great. Thank you very much, Keith. And we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, Zoe, let's move on to slide 15, talking about the education plan. Okay. So again, I mentioned the three weeks of training is required and mandatory for all staff, but for our nursing and direct care staff, they will have an additional week, so a 4th week. And you can see here the curriculum, what's covered during each of the 3 and 4 modules. So infection control, emergency services, freedom from abuse were last week. As I mentioned today, I completed the week 2 residents' rights, quality of life, behavioral health, and then we've got the other areas that are identified here. It's also important to note that this curriculum was developed based upon the areas of non-compliance that Laguna has had, not only through the mock survey, but through the past recent surveys. So this was not some canned product that could go be implemented anywhere. This was specifically designed to address the deficits that have been identified at Laguna Honda over the recent years. Next slide. So what happens in our training? So when the first step is there is an actual didactic presentation covering those areas that we've talked about: infection control, patients' rights. And then at the end of our basically 1 hour long didactic presentation, there's a post-test that is administered to everyone in attendance. Following that, we actually move to a different room and actually do skills demonstrations. So for example, for infection control, I had to don and doff PPE, gowns, gloves, goggles, face shields. We actually had to do that, and we had to be checked off that we did it appropriately in terms of meeting federal guidelines. And then there was also a verbal knowledge skill check that we had to complete and answer 100% correctly in order to be signed off as being competent in those areas. Next slide. And so these are pictures of the process. So as I said, step one was the didactic training. That's in the first square that you see on the top left. Top right represents some of those actual demonstrations. The bottom one, bottom left, represents the hand washing skills check. And I did not pass my first skills check. I did not wash my hands sufficiently, so I was sent back to do it again. And they used the little blue light to show that I got all the germs and bacteria off my hands. So again, this is very much an adult learning process with actual hands-on skills development. Next slide. Just want to also update you on some recent changes regarding our COVID-19 protocol. Again, now that we're taking advantage of having our recertification consultants on board with us, and they quickly advised that we needed to look at changing how we were handling our COVID-19 response. Previously, up until we made this change, we used to put an entire unit on what we call yellow if there was a patient who had tested positive for COVID. What that meant, before you could even step foot on that entire unit, you had to go through enhanced levels of PPE. It meant that the unit would have changes or reductions in the activities that were provided to residents. But our consultants came on board and said, well, you know, that's really not the best practice for high performing skilled nursing facilities. What they do is, instead of putting the whole unit on yellow, you only put that particular room where you may have a patient with COVID. And what this does is allows for greater freedom of movement, greater for more regular activities that are essential, you know, and required to be provided to our residents. Next slide. Another key component of how we are preparing ourselves and maintaining regulatory compliance or recertification is environment of care rounding. We have a series of environment of care rounds that occur 24 hours a day, 7 days a week across all of our departments and shifts. So we are putting all the work we're doing in terms of training and educating staff. We need to know whether or not it's working and how effective it is, and if there are places that we need to give a little bit more attention. And the way we know that is through this environment of care rounding. It's a standardized process using standardized tools. We report trend the data and monitor it and use it for feedback in terms of how we are complying towards being ready for recertification. And this information is readily available to our staff through our Quality Management Department SharePoint site. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we've done a pilot reorganization of Laguna to have it more akin to high functioning skilled nursing facilities. And so to give you a little more detail and flavor regarding our nursing department reorg, our interim chief nursing officer, Terry D'Antoni, will provide a few comments.
Good afternoon. So in addition, as Roland said, that we initiated the pilot on August 8th to recertification reset. We were noticing that despite the constant rounding and the constant reminders, that wasn't enough, that staff needed to see managers and directors in their bedside alongside of them. So we're pausing all non-essential standing meetings. This has not been easy. The directors really feel they need to be at meetings, and we've even fixed this a little bit more, saying attend the first 10 minutes, give your updates, get updates, and then go back to your units. We've already noticed some improvement with more people being at the unit. Twice weekly, I'm standing up the nursing leadership meetings to review all the rounding data and accountability for findings, plan of corrections, challenges. And that meaning one of the biggest things we're having is finding keys on med carts. And it's driving me absolutely crazy. It's not safe, and it just shouldn't happen. And so we've done things that we're now going to be counting them as part of the count. We've gotten lanyards for them so that our registry staff or our float staff have a way to put them away. And every time we find it, it's a stop the line moment. We stop the line, we get everybody and say, this is unacceptable. Where do we need to put it? I think it's time now to hold people accountable to things we know about, not just for Laguna Honda, but in any standard hospital SNF setting. We want to rebuild the units. And the one thing that was very apparent when I came here was there was only 10% of the staff were in bidded units. The rest were floated from the nursing department. And right now we're in the middle of mass bidding so that all the units can be whole. Floating will be the exception, not the rule. And then you develop unit culture, you develop unit accountability, unit responsibility. So really excited for all that to happen. In fact, Friday is the last day to hand in bids. And so in the next week or two, we'll have those stood up. In addition to the directors being switched into new positions, we're going to look at our nurse managers to see where they're best suited. We want everyone to succeed and everyone to thrive. So really excited about that. And in addition, HR has been instrumental in getting us PCAs, and we will have up to 40 new ones in the next couple of weeks onboarded at Laguna Honda.
Thank you, Terry. And again, I'm sure there'll be questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, Zoe, let's move on to slide 21. Yes, thank you. So just as I close out, I want to make you aware of two facility-related items that are important to us in terms of recertification. One is the bed reduction update. And just to remind you, when the new Laguna Honda Hospital was built and opened in 2010, it did so under the CMS federal regulations regarding skilled nursing facilities that were in place then. Once we became decertified in April, we have began our discussions with CMS in terms of what do we need to do to get back into regulatory compliance. One of the questions that we had was, knowing that CMS put new rules into place since the new hospital opened. Those new rules were adopted in 2016. And in those new rules, it said that you can have no more than 2 patients per room that share a bathroom. Well, when Laguna was built and opened in 2010, it was built with rooms that we call triplets. We have areas in each of our nursing units, neighborhoods, that have triplet rooms where there are actually 3 patients sharing 1 bathroom. And so, according to the new CMS guidelines, that does not meet regulatory requirements. And CMS clarified for us that they actually, we would not be eligible for CMS survey, CMS survey passing if we had any rooms that had more than 2 patients sharing a bathroom. So essentially it meant we had to look at our triplets, and we did an analysis, brought in our capital facilities experts, and determined that in order to meet the new regs, we will have to not use 120 of our current 780 licensed beds. So basically, we would, before we even sit and submit for CMS certification, we have to amend our current California state license to reduce our beds by 120. So where are we in meeting that target? We're about 66% there. Many patients have already been in those triplet rooms, have already been relocated to other vacant rooms, so that now there are no more than 2 patients in most of those rooms. And we're on track to having all of those triplets down to doubles by August 19th. Next slide. Another facilities-related issue that is important for recertification is our kitchen floor renovation project. This is a project that's been on the books at Laguna for several years. We basically have an area in the kitchen that has water intrusion underneath the floor tiles. And so in order to be able to pass a facility part of certification, we have a plan that we've actually been working and consulting with the state on we will fix the kitchen floor project and make repairs to it that would allow us to be successful in the survey process. So you see the dates listed in terms of where we are with some of the key milestones related to that project. But the goal is to have a vendor for the food preparation, because when this project happens, we're going to actually have to shut down preparing food in our kitchen. So we're having to bring in a vendor who will provide that food over a several-month period while the repairs are being made. Next slide. And I want to give you an update on our COVID vaccine success at Laguna. And actually, this says here 89%, and we found today we're actually at 90% of all our residents have at least 3 doses, including 1 booster, and 73% have all 4 doses, including 2 boosters. And so we, as you know, residents have the right to refuse vaccine, and so we do have some, which is why we're not at 100%. But as you can see, 90% of our patients are on board to being fully COVID vaccinated. Next slide. And finally, this represents the total of admissions, discharges, and expirations from June of last year, 2021, through July of 2022. And you see the totals there. During that basically 13-month period, there were 169 new admissions, 137 discharges planned, 22 unplanned, and 112 patient expirations, unfortunately. Next slide. So that concludes my formal presentation, and happy to facilitate any questions or that the commissioners may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pickens, for that comprehensive report. Let me first see, Mark Wright, if we have any public comment on the director's report.
Yes, thank you. There are a couple hands up already, but I just want to remind folks, if you want to make comment on this item, please press *3. Again, *3 to raise your hand.
That was my problem.
Mr. Peroshko, I think you emailed me, and I'm
Horowitz,
you.
just
Please let me know
announced
there.
the star. I didn't hit the star.
Hello?
That was the problem. Well,
Hello?
thank you for answering the phone and working with me on this.
All right.
Okay,
So
bye-bye.
you have, hello? All right. Well, that's gone. Caller number 2, please let us know that you're there.
What are you people up playing at? Today's LHH JCC executive report says that you don't know how long the pause in these deadly discharges will last. So what are you doing in the meantime? Choose suit? That doesn't challenge the discharges, only the funding. Do you really think that CMS is going to recertify Laguna Honda? Will you continue to put psych or substance use patients in Laguna Honda instead of giving them the care that they need and deserve in the proper setting? You need to cough up the money to provide psych and substance abuse services that we need. Sending cops into the Tenderloin won't solve the problem. Saying that the problem is our fault by refusing services is an outright lie and won't solve anything. To decrease corporate taxes, you made deep cuts in mental health and substance use services, creating long wait lists so people got much worse and needed hospitalization. But you also cut psych beds in San Francisco General and scaled back the MRF. And as soon as Medi-Cal stopped paying for acute care at San Francisco General, you transferred them to the Laguna Honda because it was cheaper. And now you're surprised that CMS comes in and you blame CMS for the deaths? CMS is doing bad stuff, but this one's on you. You invited the luxury housing developers in, creating homelessness. You let the private hospitals avoid taking Medi-Cal patients. You let the tech companies come in for tax-free for 10 years. You, the Health Commission, were part of these city policies. The chickens of corporate profit have come home to roost. Thank you.
All right. That's a comment. I've unmuted you. Please let us know that you're there.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please go. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, yeah, this is Dr. Teresa Palmer. Thank you for the detailed presentation of the training. This seems to say that Laguna Honda has been so neglected that staff now has to be newly trained on well-established best practices for nursing homes, which indicates that the problems do reside in the city management and training at Laguna Honda. And so my question is, CMS isn't closing the facility, they're threatening to defund it. If the facility is so behind in training and understanding that nursing home patients have rights, it seems to me the city needs to pay for those patients if it takes them longer to get if it takes you longer to get recertified. Why should the patients have to suffer for being ignored and neglected? It doesn't make any sense to me. And why should the people of San Francisco that may someday need a bed have to suffer? It just makes no sense. And the other thing, isn't one of the points of the CCSF Chu lawsuit to prevent the need for the loss of these valuable beds? Or has it already been decided that this lawsuit is for show and doomed to fail? Why do you have to reduce your licensed beds now? You should wait. It seems to me you should wait until there's further evidence that there's no choice. That doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing is I've heard nothing about not repeating past mistakes. I think San Franciscans need strong assurance from Mr. Pickens, Dr. Colfax, and the Health Commission that Laguna Honda medical and nursing staff will be free to independently screen and reject candidates from San Francisco General who are unsuitable and unsafe. And the Department of Public Health needs to reassure us that they will offer sufficient residential mental health and substance use services, even for people with disabilities who should not be in a nursing home where they can't be handled safely or where they don't want to be. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. All right, caller, you've been unmuted. Please let us know that you're there.
Yes, thank you. My name's Art Persico. I live in San Francisco, and I'm very concerned about the situation at Laguna Honda. This should be a resource preserve for all San Franciscans who need care as they become aged and disabled. And I urge the commission to do everything it can to preserve Laguna Honda. I'm a member of the San Francisco Gray Panthers, and among our demands are that Laguna Honda be open to all San Franciscans who need nursing home care, that SFDPH stop the flow project and return admission decisions to Laguna Honda hospital staff, no forced closures, no discharges for SNF eligible residents, no discharge for non-SNF and SNF eligible residents until safe and local arrangements are made, no loss of beds in this nearly new facility. Funding for existing residents must continue until recertification. Sufficient programs specifically for persons with disabilities who are also mentally ill and are substance abuse using must be made available immediately to allow them to remain in the community so inappropriate nursing home admissions will be prevented. Our specific issues with today's Laguna Honda JCC executive report are: 1, we demand that halt on discharges be permanent for nursing home eligible residents until recertification. 2, adding more staff, such as the 40 patient care assistants, is good, but why such low skilled staff? Direct care in nursing homes with medically complex residents is best done by RNs and CNAs. 3, DPH should not proceed with reducing Laguna Honda Hospital's licensed bed count by 120. 4, in terms of how Laguna Honda will operate after recertification, best not to repeat past mistakes. San Franciscans need strong assurance from Mr. Pickens, Dr. Colfax, and the Health Commission that Laguna Honda medical and nursing staff will be free to independently screen and reject candidates from San Francisco General Hospital who are unsuitable or unsafe. Finally, 5, SFDPH and related agencies must offer sufficient residential mental health and substance use services. The city must also offer accessible community residences for people with disabilities. This will provide an alternative to inappropriate placement in Laguna Honda. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Caller, I've unmuted you. Please let us know that you're there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go.
Yes, hi. Okay, good. Yes, my name is Joseph Urban. I'm the author of the petition, and we're just cleared about 16,000 signatures. I do not see that this commission nor the well-intentioned politicians at City Hall fully understand the problem that Laguna Honda is facing. Unfortunately, I don't believe anyone really understands the full problem. And what we have observed publicly is that CMS has been very uncooperative on every level. What we all assume is that the recertification will be executed via a rational and transparent survey when it occurs. CMS's lack of response for the most basic questions asked by Mr. Pickens and the Laguna Honda administrators makes me really question their underlying intent. And I'm going to echo some of the Flow Project statements made earlier. My challenge to you is to consider the following questions. Is CMS more interested in bigger topics than the operational issues that are currently under improvement? Is the population of patients with behavioral and substance abuse challenges stretching the capabilities of Laguna Honda staff to return to compliance and to maintain compliance? And is CMS playing hardball so that this commission and City Hall makes the tough financial and political choices to return Laguna Honda back to its original purpose as a skilled nursing facility for the most vulnerable in our society? So today we heard that Laguna Honda administration is focused on tactical operational improvements. It would be a tragedy if CMS is expecting strategic changes before they ultimately recertify Laguna Honda. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And everyone, I apologize. There are two folks that I am not sure if I've gotten, so I apologize if these are repeats. I'm just going to double check to make sure. Hi, person on the line, have you spoken yet?
I spoke already. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure, thanks. And person on the line, have you already spoken?
No, I have not spoken.
Okay, thank you. Then you've got 3 minutes on the clock.
Okay, this is Steve Zeltzer again with United Front Committee for a Labor Party. This is a systemic crisis. It's not just at Laguna Honda. Statewide and nationally, the nursing homes in the United States are in decline and a threat to the health and safety. Thousands of nursing home patients have died from COVID. Laguna Honda was able to protect the patients because they have a union and because they had a proper COVID policy. And with the staff, the workers were able to stay in hotels and protect themselves. At others in California, 50% of the patients died at some of these facilities. So there are very good things about Laguna Honda. It's a great facility. However, the management of the facility are incompetent, and more than that, they were sending patients to their death when they discharged them. They know, the management knows at Laguna Honda, and the mayor knows, London Breed, that there are no places for people to go. When they're put in a homeless shelter, these patients are going to die, and that's exactly what happened. We have to end this privatization of healthcare system. San Francisco has 80 billionaires, and we can't afford to take care of the people who need care and the elderly. It's an outrage. And this is, Dr. Colfax is aware of it. They were abusing patients at Laguna Honda when he arrived, the management, the previous CEO. What has this commission done about that? Have these people been held accountable? We just had a $97 billion surplus in California. Why isn't it going to these homes throughout the state? They need to be nationalized. They should be public, so we're not controlled by these for-profit corporations, which really run the home care industry in California. We have to protect this, and unfortunately, Xavier Becerra, in his actions, in his department's action, and the state of California, Governor Newsom, are actually encouraging this crisis. They're not working to solve the crisis. They're saying just shut it down. That's not the way we will protect the residents of Laguna Honda. Again, who's being held accountable for the deaths of 9? This is what we're going to be discussing at the rally that's going to be held this coming Saturday at 11 a.m. in front of Laguna Honda. Why aren't people being held accountable, the managers and executives? Why are workers being blamed when they haven't had the proper training and the proper staff and enough nurses and skilled people to take care of the serious injuries and problems that these residents face? This is a systemic problem. It's been going on for years, and it's been documented, as many people know, and it continues. Why is it? That's what we have to really address.
All right, thank you very much. That is the last public comment that I see. Commissioners, it is your turn to make comment.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks to all the callers. Now I want to see if there are any members of the committee who have any comments or questions. Dr. Chow.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Pickens and for this a very extensive discussion of where we are. And so while there are some details that are still, in my mind, questionable, including that if our buildings did not meet life safety codes today, how we were passing the state inspections in the past, but unless there are a different set of codes that the state uses. But more importantly, I think, is this issue, and more immediate, is this issue of the 120 beds and where Mr. Pickens feels that we need to move further to proceed with a downsizing of our license. I think that it seems appropriate that we put people, since we had the ability to do that, into 2-bed settings, but it would seem to me that it is premature in the face of our lawsuits, the city's lawsuits, to then apply to make that a fait accompli. And because we're not going to have the recertification for a little while, it seems to me that maybe we could work with the state to say that we're, intending, if required, by CMS to reduce the number, but we're not wanting to reduce that number now, but can we work with you in order to say that if necessary during the recertification survey itself, then we may have to get your prompt approval, and that you could do everything first to take a look at it, but not get the license reduced. So I don't know, Mr. Pickens wants to answer that, or whether he wants to provide a response later at a more appropriate time.
Sure, I can start a little bit. Thank you for that question, Dr. Chow. The way I would answer it is, when we posed a question to CMS about the new versus the old standards in terms of what we would be held to for the survey, that was prior to us filing the lawsuits. And they made it very clear that we would be held to the more current standards, which are the no triplets, only doubles. But again, that was prior to the lawsuits. So I think what we will do is we will take this back to the city attorneys, reconsult with them to see if we're able to then change our plan for how we're addressing this.
Very good. I thank you for that. I had one other question. Now, I think that to me, your presentation, that this was the most immediate issue, so I appreciate that answer. And I think some of the other questions, which are really sort of details of this very extensive educational process, we can continue to follow. We'll have the opportunity, even at the commission level, to be able to see further progress. I would hope that you've just started your new nursing program yesterday, and that perhaps I know you did before. It would be appropriate, I think, to either send to us again the chart of organization so that we can see how this works. It is a little confusing. There are directors of nurses and medical and nursing directors, so but that's merely a title issue. I think it'd be very nice to see where all these people have been placed and how we were expecting to have an improved uh, accountability through the management structure. And that would be very interesting, important for us to know whether this change in model towards a much more emphasis on residential care will help make that difference also in culture. I'm hoping also that we can get additional follow-up at our next opportunity to understand how well the um, process of the education is going. I know if Mr. Pickens didn't quite get his hand sanitized appropriately, uh, it would be interesting to find out how many more people actually are doing that, or is this such a challenge that we have to have another way of trying to teach everybody? So I think the success of our recertification is very dependent, as you all have already pointed out, on a motivated and well-educated staff. And so now that we've put these programs in place, it would be good to find a way in which we can make sure that this is happening. It wouldn't be appropriate to find it in October and they come and uh, they find that our educational opportunity still was found to be lacking. So really would appreciate a follow-up on that. There's an awful lot of work you've all put in place. Um, uh, I was curious though, who actually set up the modules? This is a very short period of time to have created educational modules.
Yeah, so it was led primarily by our consultants, but also in conjunction with the Laguna Honda Department of Education and Training.
Okay, so there's really a homegrown component to this, and it's really specifically honing in on the areas that we feel education is needed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you. I don't have any other questions at this point on this part of the report. I don't know if there's any, is this also the time to comment on the HR report and a question about the vacancies?
Why don't we see if Commissioner Green has a question relative to this recertification first, and then we can go into the, Dr. Toh, we can go into the next area of questioning. Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Well, indeed, thank you for this very comprehensive presentation, and also all the thought and effort that's gone into take the corrective actions we need. I thought, like Dr. Chow, that it is interesting that for all the inspections from the California Department of Health, that there's this whole extra element of CEPs that has been defined by CMS, but seem not to be prioritized by our immediate inspectors over time. The other thing that I was very encouraged to hear is what Terry D'Antoni said about the nurses being assigned to the same unit, because if there is something that can change culture and change compliance, it's people working together and getting to know all the patients so well. I think I was unaware that the nurses were floated to the extent that they have been, and it seems to me that having a kind of a home base and colleagues that you see day to day and therefore know how to communicate well with will go a very long way to accomplishing the tasks that you're setting out to achieve. One question I did have, and I apologize if I misunderstood or missed this at another meeting, because I may have, but can you go through the steps involved in patient discharge? And that's just not the people that were transferred recently, but others that may be discharged down road. I know that a tremendous amount of effort was put into identifying individuals. I know it's been done in the past, but I'm wondering whether there's any modifications or changes that have been made since the decertification arose, and whether that also includes looking for individuals that might specifically need mental health care facilities rather than the whole array of nursing home facilities. Can you quickly review that? You know, what the steps were, who was involved, so and whether those same steps will continue as you move forward and refine your new processes.
So, thank you, Commissioner Green. I can give a little bit, and so as part of the closure plan, the entire discharge process had to be approved by CMS. So we developed it. It describes the assessment process that includes multidisciplinary team assessments, including physicians, nurses, social workers, dietary, all of those, and it also required assessments related behavioral health assessments, including transfer trauma. And so CMS and the state approved that closure plan, which included all the steps we had to go through for discharge. And I think if either Wilmy, who is our co-lead for the discharge plan, our CMO, if she's on, I think she may have a little bit more details. But essentially, it is probably a more thorough process than we more components to it than we would do on our normal discharge process, because there were all of these required elements that were put upon us over and above what Laguna would normally do. So if either Wilmy or Irene or
Hi,
Dr.
Roland.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you did a really nice and perfect job to actually explain our current process, and you are correct in saying that we actually are more thorough with our discharge assessments and pre-discharge assessments and discharge assessments as a result of the closure plan. Now that we are at a pause for any transfers or relocations, we're actually taking this opportunity to relook at our process and look for any improvement moving forward. Having a more robust transfer trauma assessment. We're taking also this opportunity to do reassessments of everybody, of all the patients, because it's included in that closure plan. There's every 3 months that we have to do a reassessment, and so we're asking the team to really thoroughly assess their patients, and taking this opportunity as a pause, not only to reassess the patients, but also to reassess the process itself.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you not only met standard of care, but also went beyond the typical standard of care that would have been accepted as normal process before the certification challenges started. Is that right?
That is correct. You know, when we were actually formulating the closure plan, we did a preliminary assessment done by the nurse managers, our nursing staff. And then when that was completed, we did the pre-assessment, which requires the 3 disciplines, which is nursing, medicine, and social services. And then prior to any discharge, of course, is the discharge summary and the actual evaluation that day of discharge. And so we're doing extra steps as a result of the closure plan.
Thank you. I really appreciate the clarification.
Okay, I do have one question regarding the certification and all of the training and education that is happening in preparation for the mock surveys as well as the recertification itself. It would seem to me that all of these elements, there's both possibilities of really bringing all of the workers there at Laguna Honda together in some form of, greater unity around the greater cause, both tactically for the recertification, but over the long term. But at the same time, there's also opportunity for really, undue pressure and undue stress added to the stress of COVID that could have the opposite effect. And so I'm just wondering, how is that being monitored there on a regular basis, and at what levels are we seeing, if we're seeing any of that surfacing, particularly on the sort of the undue pressure and stress and how it's impacting our staff and workers? How are we planning to mitigate that?
So thank you very much for that question, Commissioner Guillermo. And we recognized very early on just what a traumatic experience and process this is for all involved. Obviously, most importantly, our residents, their families, but also our staff and other key stakeholders. And so from the very beginning, we implemented a care experience component to our response to recertification that addresses staff feelings, staff response, staff concerns, and that's being led by the Laguna Honda Chief Care Experience Officer, Jen Carton-Wade, and Jen can give more specifics to address your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. We basically, from the beginning, we started with executive rounding, going out to the units and really listening to people and getting feedback. We know that it's important for people to hear from their support network, which is the leadership and the middle management. So we've been doing that a little less right now, but at the very start, that's what we started with. We also have a care experience team that's a part of the recertification hospital incident command. And what we do is we have been meeting and kind of planning out some events and some recognitions for people as we move through this process. For example, we're currently working on a system where if a unit gets 95% on some part of the environment of care rounds or some goal, that we'll be able to recognize them in some fashion. We also just really want to hear from people, so we have DHR, representatives from DHR from time to time sitting at the cafeteria with Post-its and pens and hearing and listening to people, and we bring all that feedback back to the care experience team, and we talk about it and then try and implement different, the word that's coming to mind is different supports as needed. We also, as we're getting to be known with the different areas, for example, we had a team who reached out to us, a nurse manager who said they really wanted assistance with their team emotionally. So we were able to coordinate with EAP and bring EAP in, and they had several sessions throughout a couple of different days to support them. So we're trying to be nimble. You know, we're a tiny but mighty team, and we're trying to hear what's on the ground the best that we can, and then be able to respond in a way that's immediate, not necessarily something that's going on and on and on. So we're really trying to address the needs as they come up.
Great.
And I would like to say that just real quick about the recertification education sessions is a real opportunity for us to bring everyone together and really enforce that we are in this together. And I've seen some really cool moments happen just in this past week of people who maybe would pass each other in the hallway before but wouldn't say hi. And now they're like, hey, we washed our hands together in the bathroom. Do you remember that? And you know, we're all learning this together. We're really trying to reinforce the message about this is for all of us. You know, not only us as staff, but we're here for our residents and we're here for our families. So really using that, trying to create that sort of energy and camaraderie and teamwork as we move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. That's really good to hear that that work is going on, and just I guess a note that again, at all of the different levels of staffing, you know, from the clinical to the to the environmental, staff and administrative staff, that different types of support, are required, as well as knowing that there is a great diversity among our workers there, so that we're also paying attention to the cultural competence and language needs that are present at all of the different levels of staffing. So I appreciate though all of the efforts from the small but mighty team that you've described. We can always do more, though. Right?
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, yes.
Commissioner Guillermo,
Grant,
may
thank you, Mr.
I,
Cook. Yeah.
may I make just a comment? Grant Colfax, Director of Health, and I just wanted to share with the commission that I had the opportunity to walk around Laguna Honda with Ms. Wade late last week a couple of times, and just to say the energy is palpable in terms of working together. The training, the recertification trainings are not only the technical pieces that are so very important, but I think that there's a connectivity there that's happening. Even just the way the messaging is going forward, and some of the art that's being done that is connecting people in ways that are not only technical, but I think emotional to the commitment. And as you go into the hallways with the people lining up, there really is that sense of community. And that gives me great reason for optimism, because we've seen what Laguna Honda can do, what happened during COVID, and all the work that was done when people came together. And compared to other nursing facilities across the country, Laguna Honda did so well, and we continued to do well. You saw that data on terms of the boosters and reaching over 90%, which again, at 90%, which is much higher than other places. So I want to thank Ms. Wade. I also just wanted to add that going to some of the non-clinical parts of Laguna Honda, including facilities, there's an energy there around making sure that with the restructuring, with the retraining, that this will be done right, and that the quality improvements will be maintained and sustained. So especially given that the discharge plan has been paused, and we're trying to get more clarity from CMS and the state about how long that will be. We are moving together, not certainly at the staffing level, but also with residents and their families, in terms of ensuring that the best care is being delivered every day and that the quality improvement continues. And I just really want to thank Mr. Pickens and the many people on this call, and the people doing the work in the 13 neighborhoods, in facilities, in the cafeteria, in the pharmacy, who are all working not only to keep the hospital running day to day, but that this restructuring, this retraining, and the work that we're moving together on towards recertification will be successful.
Thank you. I think it's really important, Dr. Colfax, for you to be present and visible in this process as much as you can. Leadership matters. And so I think, if we truly are in this together, then it's from all the way to the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. So thank you. Okay, back to Commissioner Chow. You had questions that are outside of the recertification process?
Yes, actually, I had a question on vacancy, and then I just had one comment on the fact that we've been notified on a regular basis from NAS that it looks like the state has come to finally investigate many of our complaints that had been pending for several years. And so I would expect to see that improving, and that we would be able to continue to understand even better how many at that time, going back that way, were actually justified or not. And I think that the state had actually kept up to date. We would heard more at the commission meeting of issues that were perhaps now being uncovered. I actually wanted to make sure that we would have the ability to hire all those that we needed to, because I noted that the separation trends, while not large numbers, seem to be going up during June, perhaps more than the year before, and that it wasn't just merely retirement, but non-retirements. And I wanted to be sure that we actually were able then to hire the clinical staff that was necessary. This, of course, is probably a mix of both clinical and not. So I didn't know if Ms. D'Antoni particularly would have a thought and comment about our vacancy rate, the fact that we don't have the emergency, declaration to hire people much faster. And do we feel confident that we're not going to be short-staffed during this period of time?
Thank you, Dr. Chow. There's a lot of factors that go involved with the vacancies here. Just as ZSFG has, there's about 140 people on some sort of leave. In addition, we have 45 staff out, maybe a little less today, with COVID-related issues. In addition, we've had staff transfer to Zuckerberg and other places, and our vacancies are being filled. Just yesterday, 6 LVN positions, Form 3s were put into, or requests to hire were put in for those. We have RN interviews this week that we are conducting. And as I said, HR is getting our CNAs, which are PCAs, in. Staffing is an issue, and it is across the country. And I think one thing that we've done differently here that we haven't done before, instead of getting registry staff that are day staff that we onboard and they may work 2 or 3 shifts per month, I've asked them to get travel assignments. So we get people committed, trained to work 13-week assignments. And as we do the bidding for the shifts where the holes are, we will put those 13-week contract workers in those places. As we fill our vacancies, then those contract people for the remainder of their contract can be float to fill in for sick leaves, because that's the other thing. We have a 7% rate of daily sick calls amongst nursing staff. So it's a moving target. I believe that our HR colleagues are doing a great job in filling our vacancies, but it's not just a vacancy issue at this point.
Thank you very much. I reassured. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions relative to the director's report? Executive team report. Okay.
Commissioner Guillermo, I missed a public comment. Maybe go back.
Oh, sure, please do.
And I apologize. And I got an email about it. So there's 2 hands up, and I'm going to have to check both, and I apologize. Person on the line, is this Mr. Monette Shaw?
No, this is again Steve Zeltzer, United Front Community.
Thank you. Mr. Monette Shaw?
Thank you. I've been dancing up and down. It's very concerning. Laguna Honda plans to apply for a new license in early September to remove the 120 SNF beds. This is completely premature and may well undercut the third appeal City Attorney David Chu filed with the administrative law judge on May 28th. Chu's appeal challenged the termination notice and seeks to reverse the CDPH deficiency. If Chu prevails, the requirement to eliminate 120 beds will go away. Even if the 120 bed reduction is partially complete.
Keep going. You have 2 minutes.
This is so annoying with that interruption. This JCC should direct Laguna Honda on behalf of the full commission to halt any further work on applying for a reduced license in September. The decision to apply for a new license should be made by roll call vote of the full commission and not by 3 commissioners on this subcommittee. Don't undercut Chu's appeals and lawsuit. While I was waiting and then rudely cut off by this automated system, I got a reply from Next Request showing that currently there are only 2,261 SNF beds in the city. If you eliminate another 120, we will be down 234 SNF beds from just over 2.5 years ago. Wake up, folks. We need those SNF beds, and if you change your license now, you're going to have difficulty changing your license back to add in those 120 beds. Wake up. Smell the coffee. Stop this crap. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Commissioner Guillermo. I always feel badly when I miss someone, and that's my job to make sure that people have an opportunity to speak. Is it okay to move on to the next item?
Yes, please.
Okay. Item 5 is a regulatory affairs report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It is I this evening, NAWS Title II Quality Officer. I will share with you the Regulatory Affairs Report, which reflects activity for the month of July. So during July, Laguna Honda submitted a total of 23 facility reported incidences. We had 7 anonymous complaints shared with us by CDPH. For these facility reported incidences, you see the breakdown below: 19 allegations of abuse, 2 theft fiduciary, 2 adverse events, and of course, the 7 anonymous complaints. As Dr. Chow alluded to, we are seeing a lot more on-site activity from our CDPH surveyor partners and colleagues. They are definitely working through their backlog of incident reports that they have that date back to 2019. In July, we welcomed them 4 times, and they reviewed almost 50 facility reported incidences while they were here. They will continue their activity for the month of August, and of course, each time they come, it is unannounced, but we are happy to see them and support them. We still have 203 pending cases, which of course they have shared they are diligently working to close. And then Zoe, if you could scroll down a little bit, please. Thank you. And so here, this chart shows us we are seeing less and less of the gray, which is the indication of the cases that CDPH has not started their investigation on, and more of the blue, which is always good. And the orange is an indication of that they have at least started their documentation review. So even when they've come on site, they do not always provide us with a verbal outcome, as they do still like to do review at their desk. But our hope is that they will send us notifications as soon as they are able. And this graph in particular is a breakdown of our staff to resident allegations of abuse, which are still captured in the total. Any questions or comments?
Okay, thank you, Naz. I will ask if there are any public comments, questions.
Yeah.
Mark?
There are several hands already up, but I'll make the announcement again. Folks, if you'd like to make public comment on item 5, the regulatory affairs report, this is the time to do it. So your comments will relate to this report only, this item only, and I'll stop you if you're going on about something else. I will, please press *3 if you'd like to make comment, and I will mute each of you and give you 3 minutes on the clock. When the buzzer goes off, please know that your time is up. All right, first caller, please let us know that you're there.
Yes, this is Steve Zeltzer, United Front Committee for a Labor Party. I had my hand up for the previous report, and I wasn't called on. But I mean, this idea of downsizing 120 when there's a healthcare emergency and people need the beds.
You already made comment on that item. I'm not sorry. This item's not about that. We can move on to the next caller. Caller, please let us know that you're there. Caller.
This is Patrick Manette-Shaw.
Yes, you've got 3 minutes. Would you like to make comment on the regulatory affairs report? Your hand is up.
Are you calling on me, Patrick?
Yes, Patrick, I'm calling on you. I've unmuted you. This is the regulatory affairs report. Your hand is up. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes. Sadly, this regulatory affairs report for July notes Laguna Honda racked up another 23 FRIs in July alone, just when CMS is breathing down Laguna Honda's management and nursing leadership's necks, while Laguna Honda is fighting to regain recertification. This includes 8 more resident-to-resident FRIs, 7 staff-to-resident incidents, another 7 anonymous complaints, when Laguna Honda only had 2 anonymous complaints in March, none in April or May, and 3 in June. Why has there been such a sudden surge in anonymous complaints in July? Across those 5 months, there were a total of 43 resident-to-resident incidents and 21 staff-to-resident incidents. In the 4 months between March and June, a total of 75 FRIs were reported during JCC meetings. The additional 23 FRIs in July pushes the total to 98 FRIs across 5 months. Why are FRIs going up and not down? What are you people doing? Thank you.
Okay. Next person. You're unmuted. Please let us know that you're there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, well, we can. You're loud and clear.
Hi. Yeah, this is Dr. Palmer again. I think it would be good to look at if the bad interactions that are reported to the state are related to whatever the current euphemism is for the Flow project. And again, we have not heard any verbalization from anyone at Laguna Honda or in the health department that the medical staff and the nursing staff at Laguna Honda will be free to reject patients they can't take care of safely, even if San Francisco General doesn't know where to put them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's the last hand, commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thanks for the comments and questions. Commissioners, do you have any additional questions or comments on the regulatory affairs report this month? Don't see any hands.
Yeah, I had already made my comment, I think, but I would note that the number of incidents at the moment appear to be similar to the past, and I still think that our problem greatly was that the state is now catching up, but still are 200 behind, and there really is a need for them to be much quicker so that we can respond to the problems, especially as we are now looking at trying to correct all these problems. So I'd only like to thank Naz for working with the state, and it looks like they have gotten the message, but let's hope that they can get to these other, if that's 50 a month, it might take us, it would be nice if they could sort of complete them before we were to apply for recertifications, that we can be sure that we have a clean slate for everybody.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I think we would all agree with that. Thanks for that comment. Okay, if there aren't any additional questions or comments on the regulatory affairs report, Mark, I'm going to continue.
Sure. Item 6 is a consideration for a closed session. Yeah, we also take public comment on this, but if you all can do motions, and then we can take public comment.
Okay, is there a motion for a closed session?
So moved.
Oh, it was second?
All right, we'll hold that, and then there is one caller. Folks in the line, if you'd like to make comment on item 6, the closed session, please press *3 now. We'll start with one caller, and we'll see if we have others. All right, caller, you're unmuted. Please let us know that you're there.
I am, Mark. I will submit my written 150-word testimony for inclusion in the minutes. To the extent we are to believe Laguna Honda's acting CEO, Director Colfax, and Mayor Bree keep saying that you have, quote, nothing to hide, and you really believe in being fully transparent, this JCC must vote to disclose when you return to open session today what secrets you are still hiding, still trying to hide behind the veil of closed session. You need to tell Laguna Honda's patients, their families, the Board of Supervisors, and San Francisco what you know now about progress on LHH's recertification and the hospital's closure plan. It's part and parcel of former Supervisor Sandra Lee Pure's call that the Health Commission and the Department of Public Health take ownership of the problems that have been deliberately covered up about the situation at Laguna Honda. Vote to and then disclose the closed session discussion today, particularly about the addition to the closed session agendas about what you know about the closure plan. Stop hiding the truth from the public. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, and everyone else, we've got 2 other folks. Caller, you're unmuted. Please let us know that you're there.
Yeah, I think that before you go into closed session, you should deal with the issue of bullying in the workplace at Laguna Honda. The employees are being bullied. That's why a lot of them are leaving and being harassed out of the facility. The management there are blaming the workers for this crisis, which was caused by the management. And this is not being addressed here. The fact of the matter is that there's a systemic bullying of employees at Laguna Honda, which has gone on for decades, the same at General Hospital and DPH. DPH management is a bully management. That's why you've had a crisis and lawsuits, which the city and county and the taxpayer have paid for because of illegal action by the management. Who's being held accountable for that? Why are you continuing to bully and terrorize the workers and blame them for this crisis? This has to end. Again, this is going to be addressed this coming Saturday at 11 a.m. at a press conference in front of Laguna Honda to demand that an end to the bullying, to demand that no beds be removed. 120 beds means more people being killed by being discharged. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about continuing to kill people for discharges to places that are uninhabitable. That's really what's going on. There are no places to put the sick and injured workers, the disabled people at Laguna Honda, so you're going to put them in homeless shelters again and kill them. That has to stop, and you're not addressing that issue because you say you're going to continue to cut the bed number. That's the wrong way to go, and I think the people of San Francisco have to put a halt to this and demand fully opening and an end to the bullying of the employees there.
Okay, thank you. Last comment. Person online, please let us know that you're there.
Yeah, it's Dr. Palmer again. I guess you're feeling kind of browbeaten at this point, but when you use the term stakeholder, I want to remind you that both the residents and the families at Laguna Honda and the people of San Francisco who may someday need a bed are stakeholders, and we need to know as much as possible. At this point, any lack of transparency is going to fuel paranoid fantasies about taking Laguna Honda away and using the land for market rate real estate development. And I'm really hoping that this is not the case. As someone who is aging in San Francisco, who is not fabulously rich, and who is not getting any younger, I may someday need a bed, and I am a stakeholder. And I feel that there's insufficient consciousness as to what a stakeholder means. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and commissioners and everybody else. That's the last public comment on this. Folks on the line and folks who are watching, the group will go into a closed session and we'll come back at the end. You won't be able to see or hear us while we're in that closed session, but you're welcome to stay and watch the very tail of the meeting, which will simply be an adjournment. I will move us over. Everyone will take me about 30 seconds. All right, we are now back in open session. Please, commissioners, please consider a motion to whether to disclose or not disclose discussions in closed session.
Move not to disclose.
I would second that.
I will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Guillermo. All right, thank you. And now we are at consideration for adjournment.
I would move for adjournment.
Second.
All right, I will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Guillermo.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.